So let's talk about the workarounds, because the workarounds in narcissistic relationships are always focused on the narcissistic person. So that begs the question, what does that mean for everyone else in the long run? So one of the absolute truths of navigating a narcissistic relationship is that they don't change. Or you can also put it this way, that this personality style is stable. So their behavior is not going to change. That's it. It gets confusing because it does seem that the narcissistic person will periodically turn on the charm and charisma, whether with you or even with other people, or if they need something. But ultimately, the core of the pattern doesn't change. And even the transactional charisma is just simply part of the narcissistic behavior. Listen, I'm the one who's talking about workarounds, so in a way I'm guilty of this too, right? And some of this is because people cannot easily get out of narcissistic relationships. But for those who stay in these relationships, the ultimate guidance you receive on narcissistic relationships is that you're told to figure out a way around them. And frankly, we try and find ways to accommodate narcissistic people all the time. We're always choosing our battles. We walk on eggshells. But recognize that it's not us, it's them, and we try to learn to stop blaming ourselves. But ultimately, we're the ones making the changes, not them. Again, I'm always finding these articles in the New York Times. And again, there was this recent article that I've also talked about here in the New York Times about the stability of narcissism. And the simplified takeaway from that article is that it doesn't really change. It may shift a bit over the lifespan, especially in later life, but it's relatively stable. And because narcissism remains stable, stuff like the inflexibility, the defensiveness, the selfishness, the entitlement, the lack of empathy, that stuff's not going to change. One of the experts who was weighing in the Times article said, well, you got to find a way to focus on the good stuff that the narcissistic person does. Like, for example, praise them when they behave in a manner that's nice to other people, and then disengage when they behave badly. But ultimately, it's you who's having to do that dance, right? And that's the problem. It's all about you doing the accommodation. And short of the work that I and a few others do in the field, very few, or some more every day, frankly, mental health practitioners, publicly at least, talk about what all of this accommodating and ratcheting down of our expectations and having to play behavior therapist to the narcissist and always praise the narcissist for their teeny tiny little slices of good behavior. We don't talk enough about what it does to the other person in the relationship, you. We tend to shame people who can't make relationships work and give them a load of nonsense about how relationships are work and blood is thicker than water and family sticks together, which is just enabling talk that doesn't account for the severe psychological toll that being one of these relationships results in. These accommodating strategies of praising the narcissist when they do the right thing and disengaging when they behave badly. I don't disagree with that approach. But in the long term, how sustainable is it? Because it results in these relationships being an eternal one-way street. You are forever babysitting them and trying to shape their behavior. But you basically become an object in the relationship that exists to work around the narcissistic person. And the narcissistic person just views you as a way to get their needs met. You are wearing yourself out by being in this relationship. That's a fact. Each day you put up with this, you aren't getting better at it. You're getting more and more worn down. And I recognize that some people have to stay in these relationships or, can't end them or anything like that. So if you are going to stay, you do need an offset to the narcissistic relationship. It's not as simple as, I'm going to praise the narcissistic person whenever they do a nice thing. The narcissist is not a dog. You cannot shape their behavior through repeated commands and treats. Because ultimately, for the narcissistic person, their frustration, their negative moods, their lack of capacity to regulate their emotions when they don't get their way will always take precedence. So you can tell them, oh, what a good guy you are. You're so wonderful for bringing in the trash. We are all so lucky to have you in our lives. You could say that all damn day. But the minute things don't go exactly the way they want, it's as though you never once said a nice thing to them. Narcissistic people don't hold on to the long-term historical arc of a relationship. They just react to their current mood. The dog, frankly, is smarter when it comes to behavioral change. And the dog's behavior will remain changed if you are consistent. Maybe leave the narcissist and keep the dog. There is no making it work with the narcissist. There is merely avoiding setting them off, trying to maintain some sort of short-lived equilibrium, teaching yourself to shut your authentic self off around them, radical acceptance, recognizing the limitations of the relationship, maintaining realistic expectations, but that all also means that you have to be able to get those needs met someplace else, that you do need places where you can be your authentic self, to not spend your life tiptoeing through broken glass, to recognize that you don't have to say every word perfectly in some circumstance and keep having to praise the other person because they did one right thing, while that's never offered to you. I get it. People have narcissistic people in their lives, families, workplaces, and want to make it work. Perhaps the place to start is to stop seeing it as making it work and instead ask the question, how much is this going to hurt me? How much is going to be asked of me? How much do I have to give up to make this roll more smoothly? That's the more meaningful question. Because ultimately, we have to come back to the central point. It's not going to change, and you won't be the exception. Thanks again.